During the ceremony, Howard showed nothing but love to the city of Orlando and the franchise itself.
The World Baseball Classic coming up, wanted to mention that the MLB had a record number of Cuban players last season.
Now, once they get to the play-in tournament, there's 3 teams they could play. The Hawks, who they beat yesterday, the Heat, or the Bulls. So the NBA's playoff picture isn't set just yet, but the Magic do have that 7 seed. If there was one Miami Dolphins player who looked noticeably different as training camp opened on Wednesday, it was pass rusher Chop Robinson. He's up at 265 after gaining 10 pounds since last season.
Tyler, what unit would you say concerns you the most?
Offensive line, just based on what's happening with that situation at right tackle right now, wondering if that's going to affect the rest of the offensive line, who's going to have to possibly come in as reinforcements.
Florida Gators have one of the most crowded running back rooms in the country, and that's why All-SEC running back Jaden Ball has been taking some snaps in the Wildcat throughout the spring. The Yankees are sitting at first in the AL, so I came to Yankee Stadium to ask fans if their team's for real or if they're just getting false hope.
I'm going to be honest, it's fake. They're not doing anything this year.
With the World Baseball Classic coming up, wanted to mention that the MLB had a record number of Cuban players last season.
So the star Cuban player has never been easier to find in the United States, but he's also never been harder to find in Cuba. When I spoke to former World Series MVP Livan Hernandez about it, he broke down the reality of defecting pretty simply.
Si tú no te pruebas el mejor jugador del mundo, ¿cómo vas a saber si eres uno de los mejores?
In this series, we'll talk about Cuba's history with the MLB because for decades it was the closest relationship the MLB's had with another country. The Cincinnati Reds even had a AAA team in Havana, which was the first and only country to have their own minor league team. But as the relationship between the two countries got worse, neither country was allowing Cuban players to come over, so they had to escape through some pretty dangerous conditions, with some ending up in detention centers and some even being held hostage. So we'll start with some historical context, because the Reds took a trip to Cuba for some exhibition games that ended up changing everything. They lost almost every game they played against Cuban teams and ended up coming home with Rafael Almeida and Armando Marzan, which was the MLB's first 2 Cuban players. But that pipeline really burst in 1936 when Clark Griffith, the former manager of that Reds team, became the owner of the Washington Senators, because he ended up telling Joe Cambria, who was one of his scouts, about all the talent in Cuba. So Cambria ended up moving to the island and signed more than 400 Cuban players over the span of 3 decades. But long before Dominican players or Puerto Rican players were coming over, Cuba was the MLB's first Caribbean pipeline. War Bernard grew up in a village in Abuja, Nigeria. Hasn't played a down of organized football, but NFL Combine trainers say he's the most athletic player they've ever seen. He's a defensive tackle in the NFL's International Pathways Player Program and just had an insane pro day at the NFL's HBCU showcase. And while he wasn't invited to the NFL Combine, he would have been the most impressive player there. Because when you average out all his scores and times, he had a perfect relative athletic score. He came in at 6'4.5" and 306 pounds with just 6% body fat. He ran a 4.63 40-yard dash, which would have broken Aaron Donald's record for defensive tackles. And he had a 39-inch vertical jump, which would have been a foot higher than any defensive tackle at the Combine. We saw the Eagles strike gold and get an All-Pro out of Jordan Mailata through the NFL's Pathway program, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that moving forward. Senate Bill 172, also known as the Georgia Sports Betting Integrity Act, was introduced by Senator Bill Cowsert and was passed 8-4 by a Georgia Senate committee, but it still has to be approved by 2/3 of the House and Senate.
You don't figure out a pathway to put guardrails and parameters around it, you're not going to stop people from doing it. The late Dr. Martin Luther King talked about this in one of his commencement speeches, and he said, you cannot legislate morality. You can only legislate behavior. And it's my intent, by legalizing sports betting, we can put the parameters around legalizing the framework in which we hope people will govern themselves.
The bill would form a sports betting commission that's responsible for giving licenses to prospective sports betting operations. Some platforms that would be legalized include online and mobile sports betting through platforms like DraftKings and FanDuel. State Representative Ron Stevens says he's blown away by how much electronic sports betting has grown.
These things weren't even invented then, so the only thing that you had was a paper. The question's even bigger than sports betting. It's about electronic gaming, which encompasses a whole lot of things.
In 2019, the presidents of the Atlanta Hawks, Braves, Falcons, and United formed the Georgia Professional Integrity Alliance. These organizations aren't just pushing for betting to be legalized, they want it to be allowed in their own stadiums through kiosks. And if the bill did get approved, it'd still have to be passed by a statewide referendum. Reporting in Savannah, Tyler Carmona, WSAV News 3, on your side.